Welcome to Health Talk from Mars. It's out of this world, and welcome to another episode. In today's talk, I wanted to discuss a topic near and dear to my heart, and that is cancer. So cancer is something that's an extremely important topic because we're seeing more and more cancers, and so I want to do a book review of one of my favorite books. So stay tuned. As of 2024, cancer is the number 2 cause of death by disease, just closely following the heels of cardiovascular disease. What we know is that similar causes to cardiovascular disease are also involved in cancer. So when we talk about cancer, we're also talking about other diseases as well. So in today's episode, I'm going to be doing a book review on foods to fight cancer, my number 1 book that I like to recommend for people to understand the basis of the causes of cancer and how we can prevent the development of cancer. In the book Foods to Fight Cancer by Gingras and Bellevue, they talk about the nature of cancer and why cancer even develops in the body. They also recommend specific foods related to various types of cancers and how you can optimize your dietary intake of these foods to prevent cancers. And lastly, they go into various types of lifestyle changes that you can make to minimize your risk of exposure to various carcinogenic compounds. So without further ado, let's get into what is cancer. In the first section of Foods to Fight Cancer, they go through a very lengthy, detailed description of why we develop cancerous cells. Cancerous cells just don't develop naturally. They develop specifically because of various reasons. One of the most important reasons has to do not with genetics, but with your environment. So it's guesstimated that 90% of all cancer is actually coming from not your genetics, but your environment. So genetics do play a role, but they play a relatively small role. There's another great book I recommend, The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton, that gets into a little bit more detail on just that fact. So in the book Foods to Fight Cancer, one of the most important topics that they cover is that if we take a look at weeds growing in a garden, weeds require a certain amount of food and a certain amount of water. If you deprive the weeds of food and water, they will basically die. So that's similar to cancer cells. We're constantly developing cancerous cells in the body due to various factors. Some of those factors are from dietary sources, some are from the environment, and some are from things that we really can't prevent, which is exposure to background radiation, etc. So let's discuss a little bit more in detail what is mentioned in the book about making sure that you provide an inhospitable environment for the growth of cancer cells. So 1, we know that as our blood becomes more alkaline, an alkalinity more type of blood creates an environment that inhibits the growth of cancer cells. As mentioned, cancer cells are constantly being formed due to exposure to ionizing radiation and various types of environmental toxicants and toxins as well. So in the prevention of cancer, we need to think about the fact that 1, we're not just going to be sitting ducks for these cancers, but we can actually take some important actions to prevent these cancer cells from expanding in our body. So one of the things that we know is that in your blood there's something called insulin-like growth factor. Insulin-like growth factor is something that promotes the growth of cells. when you're a teenager and you're a youngster, you want to have plenty of insulin-like growth factor in your blood because you're growing. As an adult, we don't want cells to grow beyond their capacity. And so this is what happens. This is the development of cancer cells. So insulin-like growth factor is one particular compound hormone in the body that promotes the growth of cancer cells. Number two, we know that elevated levels of insulin, high levels of insulin and diabetes significantly increase the risk of developing cancer cells and promoting their growth. We know that cancer cells, they love to eat glucose. So if you can limit their access to glucose, you're doing a wonderful thing to prevent those cancer cells from growing. So another, point that's made in the book, following the, reason why we develop various types of cancers is, okay, what foods in particular can we consume that will downregulate the growth of these cancer cells? Knowing that we're constantly making these cells, but yet we can inhibit their growth and stop their development. One is to prevent blood supply to these cancer cells. So there's a number of foods, and also we would link spices to foods that can prevent these cancer cells from becoming more aggressive and more expansive in the body. So I think that Doctors Bellevue and Gingras do a wonderful job at laying out various types of foods in different food categories and pointing out specific compounds in foods called phytonutrients. Phytonutrients are basically, as the word says, nutrients that are found specifically in plants. So plants contain a vast array of compounds that inhibit the growth of cancer cells. And so some of these compounds are found in food families such as the brassica food family. The brassica food family is a family of foods that basically contain compounds called sulforaphane and glucosinolate. Glucosinolate is a compound that gets converted into sulforaphane by an enzyme called myrosinase. Myrosinase is an active enzyme that's found in broccoli, in cauliflower, in Brussels sprouts, broccoli sprouts in particular. So this enzyme needs to be active in order to convert glucosinolate into sulforaphane. Sulforaphane is one of the most cancer protective substances that we have in our diet. So getting enough sulforaphane and glucosinolate is critical in the prevention of cancer. Some other compounds found in foods, phytonutrients, would include ellagic acid. Ellagic acid is a particular compound found in high amounts in various types of berries, especially berries such as blackberries, raspberries, and strawberries. So this compound, ellagic acid, greatly protects us from the growing of cancer cells in the body. Other phytonutrients, turmeric, for example, is a spice that contains high amounts of various types of flavonoids, including quercetin and also carotenoids. Carotenoids are yellow pigments that are found in foods. So we know that there's various types of carotenoid compounds found in foods. These are yellow pigments found naturally in foods. So the skins of onions have a significant amount of quercetin. Mangoes have a significant amount of quercetin. The skins of fruits and berries have significant amounts of quercetin. So knowing that, we know that we should be consuming from plants and also vegetables the skins of these various plants. So for example, red wine is made by fermenting the skins and also the inside part of the grape. And in doing so, a significant amount of this quercetin is extracted and goes into the wine. So we know that drinking 1 or 2 glasses of wine a day is actually have been shown to be protective of certain development of certain types of cancers. So I believe that red wine is actually a tincture of various types of phytonutrients. That means we've extracted some of the active constituents and it goes into the red wine. Some other important foods that are really protective. Think about colors, as many different colors as possible. So pomegranate seeds, for example, are extremely high in certain phytonutrients that protect against both breast and prostate cancer. So one of the things that we know is trying to diversify the number of foods that we get with phytonutrients. So that means we know that there's over 200,000 edible plants on the planet. We only consume about 200 of them. So expanding our horizon for getting these phytonutrients, I think, is an important goal, dietarily wise. And this is something that they stress in this book, Foods to Fight Cancer. So not only foods, but also things like spices and teas. For example, green tea has a compound in it called ECGC, epigallocatechin gallate. This compound has been shown to be very protective against various types of cancers, and consuming it on a daily basis, we believe, is one of the reasons why the Japanese have much less cancers than we have in the United States. So green tea or rooibos tea, which has some of the same constituents, would be a great food or tea to add into your diet. In addition, we know that there's other phytonutrients that are found not only in the skins of fruits and vegetables, but also, as mentioned, in various herbs. So we mentioned turmeric. Garlic contains a compound called allicin, which would be an important food to include in your diet on a regular basis. So garlic is protective against cardiovascular disease as well as also cancers in the body. Okay, so in preventing cancer, we named a bunch of phytonutrients that are involved. I want to specifically talk about the ingestion of fiber. 97% of the U.S. population doesn't even get the recommended dietary allowance for fiber. So that's an astonishing number of people. So in fiber, fiber contains not specific phytonutrients necessarily. It contains various types of compounds that are involved in stimulating the growth of beneficial microbiota in your GI tract. So most people don't know that your microbiota is responsible for most of your immune function. So as your microbiota goes, so goes your immune system. If you have poor microbiota, your basically defense against cancers will be less and less. We know as we increase the amount of fiber in our diet, that also causes a decrease in bowel transit time. If you decrease bowel transit time, you will create less cancerous compounds in your GI tract. So what we know are there's various compounds. One of them is TMAO, trimethylamine N-oxide. Trimethylamine N-oxide is a compound specifically made from both choline and also carnitine, compounds that are commonly found in meat and animal products. So in consuming these foods, we know that if we increase the level of TMAO in our blood, this increases significantly various types of cancer cells in the body. So other things that we know specifically about fiber is that fiber will down-regulate the amount of insulin that you require. Increased levels of insulin in the body have been associated with increases in many types of cancers. So we know that not feeding your cancer, decreasing your blood sugar is an essential part in the therapy at preventing cancer from growing. So another extremely important thing with regards to fiber and the microbiome are there certain compounds called postbiotics. Postbiotics are compounds that exist in the colon that are generated from certain types of fiber. So fiber gets metabolized by certain microbiota into these post-probiotic compounds. Acetate, fumarate, propionate, and butyrate are some of those compounds. They inhibit the growth of various types of cancer cells that happen in the colon. Colon cancer is something that's epidemic in Western cultures and is something that we can do amazing things to prevent if we consume, again, enough, not only the amount of fiber, but the diversity of fiber. So it's recommended that we consume at least 30 different types of plant foods per week. So that would include spices. I mentioned turmeric. We also mentioned garlic. I didn't mention ginger and also basil and thyme and many herbs that we use culinarily wise in our foods that would prevent cancers. So I want to encourage everyone to use as many different plant spices as possible when they're preparing foods. So how can we prevent exposure to various types of toxicants and toxins from our environment? Well, one of the things that we know is how we prepare food. So there's something in our diet called AGEs, advanced glycated end products. Advanced glycated end products are compounds specifically that come mostly from animal products, and especially animal products that have been cooked a certain way. So char-broiling animal products is going to create the greatest amount of AGEs, advanced glycated end products. We know that processed meats are also going to cause problems with these advanced glycated end products. Sausage and bologna and cold cuts. So you want to try to avoid processed meats, again, as much as possible. Also, other compounds that are found in animal products are heterocyclic amines. Heterocyclic amines, again, are produced especially during the cooking process. So if you're going to eat some meat, best to prepare the meat by either steaming it or cooking it in water. That greatly reduces the amount of carcinogenic compounds that are created in these foods. So just keep aware of what you can do, again, to prevent the production of these compounds. In the book, Foods to Fight Cancer, they go through a bunch of different techniques that you can use and some really wonderful little tips on how to maximize your anti-cancer compounds through a variety of different foods. I oftentimes give a handout to my patients, the 20 top foods in the world to consume, and the idea is to greatly expand the amount of plant foods that you're eating and expand not only the amount but also the number of plant foods that you're consuming. So things like buckwheat, for example, contain certain phytonutrients that you won't find in any other type of grain. And by the way, buckwheat does not have any gluten, so if you're avoiding gluten, it's a good food to include in your diet. Oats, of course, cheap person's food, also high in soluble fiber, a great food to include in your diet. It does have some important phytonutrients that do protect against cancer and also especially important at preventing blood sugar abnormalities in the form of diabetes. Okay, point number 3 regarding the prevention of cancer in the body, and let's talk a little bit about supplementation. So supplementation is sometimes poo-pooed by conventional medicine and even alternative medicine. And so I think this is a really important area that needs to be addressed because it's a way that we can include more plant foods into our diet. In other words, a supplement can be made of various types of plants, especially plants that can be protective against cancer. So I developed a particular product called OxyQuench Ultra, which consists of a number of nutrients as well as plants that contain phytonutrients that are protective against cancer. One of the most important herbs is something called milk thistle. So milk thistle is an herb that especially is important with regards to the liver. So everything that you eat, everything that you breathe in goes into your bloodstream and goes to the liver. And the liver then has to detoxify whatever it is that you're breathing it in, whether it's car exhaust or whether it's forest fires, household chemicals that you're exposed to. They all go into your bloodstream and they all go right to your liver, and the liver detoxifies them. So one of the things that we know about milk thistle is that milk thistle contains an active constituent called silymarin. Silymarin is one of the most potent antioxidants for the liver. So if you're living in a city, if you're flying on a plane, driving in a car, being exposed to just everyday chemicals that are in every household, having a certain amount of milk thistle on a daily basis is really an important factor in limiting your toxic effects from environmental toxicants and toxins. So other ingredients found in OxyQuench, one is tocotrienol. Tocotrienol is a particular form of vitamin E that's found in OxyQuench Ultra, and it comes from a plant, annatto, found in the Brazilian rainforest. And so annatto is a deep reddish yellow pigment that's protective against many different types of cancers. Another compound that we have are carotenoids found in OxyQuench from the algae called Dunaliella salina. Dunaliella salina is an algae that's found off the coast of New Zealand and is super concentrated in carotenoids. Carotenoids are yellow pigments that are shown to be protective against many different forms of cancer. So having a supply of carotenoids on a daily basis is really important, and certainly the algae Dunaliella salina is an important one. Lastly, found in OxyQuench Ultra are flavonoids from citrus. Flavonoids from citrus contain a number of compounds, including quercetin, which I mentioned previously. Also, rutin and hesperidin have been found to decrease inflammation in the body. So if you want to maximize your protection against cancer, I strongly recommend taking OxyQuench on a daily basis. If you're exposed to even extra toxicants, such as if you're flying in an airplane, or if you're going to do some construction work where you're painting, take extra OxyQuench. Or if you know you're going to go out drinking and have a certain amount of alcohol, taking OxyQuench beforehand is a great idea to prevent free radical formation in the body that happens from taking in toxicants. Cancer is really a scary topic for many people, and we're seeing more and more cancers in younger and younger people. And so to be more proactive, I urge you to read the book Foods to Fight Cancer by Gingras and Bellevue. And also you can check out my product OxyQuench from marznutrition.net and read a little bit more about it, and you can also purchase it from there. So I urge you to be more proactive in your fight against cancer rather than just doing cancer research. We know what we can do to prevent cancers and their progression in the body. So thanks for tuning in to Health Talk from Mars. It's out of this world, and join me for my next episode.